Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to another episode of Changing the Questions. My name is Paul Laporte. Joining me, as always, my usual partner in crime, Mike Miner.
Hello, everybody.
And we are rolling along with another episode where we will take one singular solitary question and analyze it to death. Death being exactly, approximately, 15 minutes long. Today's question, and this is one that has been requested from a few different people a few different times, and even you and me bounced it back and forth before. Should WWE bring back the brand extension? Now, I don't think there's going to be anybody listening to the show who doesn't know what the brand extension was, but just for argument's sake, back in the early to mid 2000s, WWE actually split up their product into Raw and Smackdown, and that included completely different rosters, completely different champions, different owners, writing teams. Like, it was literally booked like it was two separate products, and this was done to varying degrees of success. One of the most notable things about that time period was that SmackDown, at least in the early goings, was booked by Paul Heyman, and it was considered some of the best television that had been done in recent years.
The SmackDown 6.
Yeah, and it got to the point that it was actually overshadowing the quote-unquote bigger show of Monday Night Raw. Now, ever since they did away with that in... When did they do it in?
It just kind of fizzled out.
I know, but there was a specific year where they stopped it. 2007? 2007.
It might have been later than that. I mean, because they were still doing, Raw, SmackDown, Super shows. They were kind of...
They're doing Super shows, but it wasn't like specific champions and...
The specific champions lasted up until, I'd say, the official death knell of the brand split was probably around 2.5 years ago when they merged the championships.
2002 and 2011.
No, when they merged the...
That's what the Wikipedia article says. That
2011,
the brand extension lasted between 2002 and 2011.
Wikipedia says a lot of things.
Okay, and all right, it doesn't
either
really
way. It's kind of hard to pin down. And that's the problem with this company. Sometimes it's hard to pin down anything.
Okay, let's not get off topic.
Anyway,
right, so here's the question: is ever since it's been done away, there's rumblings once every year that maybe they should bring it back. Maybe they should do it in a way that will kind of give people who are on the undercard more prominence. That was one of the benefits of doing the brand extension, is that people who probably wouldn't have gotten a spot otherwise on television kind of got time and got to do their own thing and got to establish characters. And you have a lot of people right now on the main roster who just are kind of languishing or are not getting the time they deserve. And people think that maybe the brand extension would be some sort of way to remedy that. Miner, we'll start with you. What do you think?
For what it was at the time, I liked it. I thought it was okay, but, it went back and forth. Like you said, the SmackDown show was fantastic back in the day. Then people were saying, no, can't have this. Raw's the main show. Got to have focus on that. And then that was it. SmackDown kind of, it became second rate, I guess. Then you had ECW later on. That came into the fold. And it just kind of watered the whole thing down, I guess. You had 3 main champions. One of them, I guess, after a while, didn't really count too much, but it was done. Leave it alone. The closest we have to it again is NXT.
So you don't think that they should do any sort of official brand extension?
Let's put it this way. When it was good, it could have been really fucking good. But when it was bad, it was terrible. Some of the shows on pay-per-view were terrible. I remember us paying prices for those pay-per-views. Get a couple of friends and watch them. Some were atrocious. But the ones that were good were really good. So, I mean, it's...
Yeah, but you can still say that kind of about today's product, though, right?
Of course you can say that about today's product, but I'm also not paying $50. But that's not to justify terrible stories, either. So, what are your thoughts on it?
I don't know. I personally think it's a good idea to bring it back, although if we were bringing it back, I wouldn't do necessarily Raw and SmackDown again. I do WWE and I do NXT.
Right now, I feel like that's what they're doing anyway.
You're right.
They're keeping them separate, but they're not going to...
They kind of are.
There's very little interaction between, right,
but
WWE
still,
and NXT. It's just kind of like touch and go.
Yeah, but NXT is still seen as a developmental program.
Well, of course.
The end goal of NXT is to move up to WWE. I personally think that they should get at a point where the main goal of NXT no longer is to leave it.
Yeah.
I think it should get to a point where, and we've mentioned this before, back in the first episode, where WWE, the main roster, it's meant to be one thing. It's meant to be pop music.
Yeah.
It's Capitol Records, and NXT is indie music. It's Interscope. It's catering to two different flavors, which is kind of what the idea of the brand extension was originally, was to kind of have Raw and SmackDown be kind of two different things.
Red team and blue team!
Right, but they weren't really. And there wasn't really, it was just kind of really like drawing a line down the center of the same room, whereas WWE and NXT actually do feel like very specific, separate things. So I think that they should do it that way. I wouldn't change that much with what NXT is, honestly. I would keep it to the hourly shows. 1 hour a week may not seem like a lot, but I think it would be enough. Maybe do some sort of thing where you split the divisions. Maybe you put the women's division in NXT, and then you put like the tag team division on Raw, and then you have your NXT champion, your heavyweight champion. You put like the US title on NXT and keep the IC title on WWE. Do something like that, or do like a new secondary title for NXT, and then that way I think that would help the scheduling potential crowding that you would see in NXT if we just moved like the tag division off of it completely, and then moved like the women's division. So you have like the main women's, the main men's, and then maybe secondary titles.
You brought up a good point. I think a secondary championship in NXT would work well. Don't move any of the championships they have now on Raw and SmackDown. Just create a new championship. You know what you could do? Create a television championship. That would make sense. That would be a tremendous thing to do.
WWE Network Championship.
Why not? Internet champion. Make it happen.
Although as was established this past weekend, Rusev is currently the television champion.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I have monitor. I am champion.
But
Bulgaria rocks.
Honestly, I think that the kind of what WWE has put themselves into with the whole NXT is developmental, and we're going to start kind of everybody in NXT, move them up. It's a thing where WWE tries to emulate what people are going to expect on the main roster in NXT, but they ultimately just can't. I mean, the rings are the same size, the camera work's kind of the same, but the environment's completely different. And I think there are just certain wrestlers who are going to work better in that NXT environment than ever will on the main roster. So I think keeping that to the point where just keeping the people who have that kind of more that indie cred, or that people who can perform over longer matches to a smaller crowd and really kind of, like it's kind of the comparison of like, all right, like take Magic, not the card game, but actually magicians. There are some magicians like David Copperfield who like work in front of, stadiums with like 1,000 people or more. And then there are like street magicians who work in very, very close proximity to 20 people. You could not put a street magician on a stage and expect him to do well. You could not take David Copperfield and throw him in front of 20 people and expect him to do what he does best. So I think maybe having people stay in NXT, if people go over to Raw or WWE, the main roster, I think is maybe a way to fix that.
Now, to that end, how far are you willing to go with it as far as keeping them separate shows?
What do you mean?
Do you think NXT, like I mentioned earlier, I mentioned the TV Championship, maybe do a TV Championship, save your main champion, the NXT champion for, I guess special occasions. Have them show up, do promos, but not do matches all the time. But going back to the brand itself, maybe a once-a-year big event.
I mean,
like a WrestleMania. WrestleMania is good.
Mean, maybe just do it.
Maybe that's WWE's thing. Like I said, how far are you willing to take
this
whole
brand
separation?
I guess TakeOver Brooklyn is basically NXT's WrestleMania, essentially. That's what they're going to establish it as. So maybe still do the kind of I think they could keep everything that NXT does and be fine. Do your 4 tapings a month schedule, your 4 tapings in one weekend schedule or one day schedule. Do your live specials every other month instead of once a month. I think that kind of helps keep things fresh. And I do agree that there should be some event where it's
really
WWE
showcases.
versus, you take the World Heavyweight Champion and the NXT Champion, go on down the line.
Yeah, I remember touching on that before.
And then do it that way. I think having those sort of matches just be non-title, I think would still be fine, because I think it's still enough of a draw. That way you wouldn't have to worry about, one guy having both belts, or you have to move somebody somewhere else or whatever. And it would still be a surprise if an NXT guy shows up in WWE. There's been a trade, and a WWE guy shows up back on NXT, something like that. I think that there's a lot of different things you can do with it. I guess maybe don't do it at WrestleMania. Maybe that's a bad idea, because then that takes away, then you don't really have any title shots there. But, I don't know, maybe do it at like a SummerSlam or something like that. Although then that falls close to TakeOver Brooklyn. I don't know, maybe establish some sort of other pay-per-view during the year where they have both, just WWE versus NXT and have them face off.
If they're going to do anything as far as, separate brands, I guess that's kind of what they're doing now, but not to the full extent that we were talking about. But
although,
excuse me,
if you split the divisions, if you put like the tag division in one side, the women's division on the other side, you only have to really worry about that for singles wrestlers. So that's not going to really, maybe you don't need to build a whole card around that.
See, I'm okay with them keeping, a tag division in NXT, tag division on Raw, SmackDown, whatever. So that's where we differ. It's like I said, I really don't want another brand split, but probably the best way would happen is with NXT and WWE, not Raw, SmackDown, not ECW, Raw, SmackDown, not OVW, whatever. But, if they're going to do something like this, I think they should do it soon. For some reason, I have this sense in the pit of my stomach that they're going to expand beyond NXT and start setting up camps around the country and potentially around the world.
There's been a lot of rumblings that WWE is going to be purchasing Evolve, which is another independent promotion run by Gabe Sapolsky, who was the original booker for Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk that he is going to be, that WWE is going to be purchasing them and use them as kind of like an NXT to NXT.
Yeah.
Which isn't a bad idea, and I think if that happens, it wouldn't surprise me, like you said, if they kind of expand NXT to make it more than just a developmental promotion. And I was even saying, I think that 2016 is going to be the year that NXT, maybe it's not going to be an official, concrete, set in stone brand split, but I think it is going to be the year where NXT becomes more important than just being a developmental show, specifically and officially in the eyes of WWE, because it already is in the eyes of the fans.
As long as one doesn't cannibalize the other, and everybody that's listening to this can say, I wouldn't mind if NXT cannibalized Raw.
I kind of was about to say
you're
that.
You're out of your fucking mind if you think that's a good thing, because you need variations on this. You need different things to digest.
No, I get that. One of the reasons that NXT is seen as so good is because
it has Raw.
The main roster is seen as so bad.
Yeah.
Ironically enough.
It's not even that the performers are bad. It's just...
No, of course not.
It's just that everything is so kind of, generic and
We're
going to
put our world title on a 47-year-old.
And think about this. It's a show called Raw. It's supposed to be...
I know, it is.
Was it uncooked?
It's
uncut and uncensored?
The most bland thing that exists, and it was supposed to be this edgy hip show.
They no longer use the word war anymore. Raw's War used to be a great theme, as far as, not a song, but as far as a show theme goes. Well, no, it's... Keep going.
Repeat that.
No, it's just as far as like a show, like kind of like the way a show is, like a sense, a feel for the show. It felt like these guys were really going at it, and
that's kind of what NXT feels like now. Honestly,
it's kind of what it feels like, but it's got a different. I think it's got a different kind of feel. It's slightly different. It's not like all out, bashing and smashing.
No, the violence is gone out of it, but it's still. Just wrestlers wrestling.
If anything, the Raw's War era was more like a car wreck,
right?
But albeit a very fun one.
It still has that, like I said, kind of that edgier feel in a way that, like I said, isn't like it's not like it's not like teenager edgy. It's like actually like it has its own style to it and it sticks to it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for us. We want to know what you think. Should WWE enact some sort of brand extension? And if so, how should they do it? Be sure to leave a Comment in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're listening to us on YouTube. If you're listening to us on iTunes, be sure to leave a nice 5-star review, say some nice things. A bit of a programming note. Because of bandwidth issues, we are just doing episodes of Changing the Questions as podcasts. Everything else is going to be at our YouTube channel, at least for the time being. So if you like Changing the Questions and you haven't heard the other stuff, be sure to head over there and check out Booking a Better Wrestler. Time Warp was a new segment that we just debuted recently. Be sure to check that out. Check out all our recaps and preview shows of pay-per-views for WWE and others. If you want to leave us some feedback, be sure to send that to changingthequestions@gmail.com, or you can check us out on Twitter @changingtheqs, which is @changingtheqs. Also, be sure to like us on Facebook. Just search for Changing the Questions there. And that's going to wrap it up for us.
Thanks, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.